Hey everyone, this is Greg Benz with another post-processing tutorial. In this video, you'll learn how to take a noisy, high ISO starry shot like this and get a nice clean finish result like this simply by stacking multiple exposures together. Again, that was going from this noisy result to this finished result here, and I did that simply by combining 9 different photographs. If we take a look at the noise in the original image here, all these little background dots are just high ISO noise, but they're completely random. These bright stars, of course, are not random. So every single shot of my 9 shots has these same stars, but the background noise is moving around a bit. So I can simply stack them together and basically average them out, which will eliminate the background noise, which is more or less the same thing as shooting with a longer exposure, because I'm giving the camera sensor more time to gather the available light. Why not shoot with a longer shutter speed? Well, the stars are moving because of the Earth's rotation. So if I used a longer shutter speed, I would get a very clean black background, but the stars would turn from nice little dots to long streaks. And in fact, if you look at these stars closely, a number of them look like they're kind of sloping a little bit down and to the right. So they actually aren't perfectly sharp stars in this image. Now, there are a lot of different ways to determine what's the appropriate shutter speed. I do this visually, and this is what I determined was a good result. And printed large, this is going to look fine. We're looking at the extreme close details here. But you may have heard of rules such as the rule of 500, which says to take the number 500 and divide it by the focal length of your lens. For example, I use a 16mm lens here, so 500 divided by 16 would suggest that we need to use about a 30-second exposure. So you can see I don't like that rule. In this case, I use 13 seconds and I already have a little bit of blurring. At 30 seconds, I don't like the result. So my recommendation would be simply to take an image, and if the stars are moving, use a faster shutter speed until they stop moving. And that will tell you the longest shutter speed you can get away with without having motion in your stars. And the answer is really dependent. If you have a wide angle lens, then it's not going to show as much motion as a telephoto. If you have a high resolution sensor, more megapixels, then you're going to be able to see more movement in your image. And depending on where you shoot in the sky, if I point my camera towards the North Star, which isn't moving, the stars around it move pretty slowly. Whereas if I point far away from the North Star, where the stars are moving very quickly, then a different shutter speed will give me a different result. So it really depends. Just take some test images, and that will tell you the right settings to use for your camera. So let's take a look at the image that I actually stacked together. This is the first image, and as I step forward in time, notice that the stars are moving counterclockwise on top. Again, they're moving counterclockwise, and look at the water below. The stars in the water are reflected, so they're moving in the opposite rotation. They're moving clockwise, and the stars in the sky are moving counterclockwise. So I actually have to do a few different adjustments to get alignment. I'm going to take this set of 9 images, and I'm going to align the stars in the sky and combine that in one stack, and that will give me a clean, noiseless result in the top of the image. And then I need to do the opposite stacking down below. I need to rotate the opposite direction to stack for those stars in the water. And then the ground is not moving, so I actually need to stack all these images a third time in order to get rid of the noise in the trees and other foreground details that aren't moving. So I'm going to create 3 different stacks, each one built from the same 9 images, but I'm going to rotate in one direction above, another direction below, and for the trees here, I'm not going to rotate at all. Then I'll take those 3 different stacks and combine them in Photoshop. Let's take a look at how we actually create one of these stacks. So I'm going to jump over to the Develop module in Lightroom, and just want to show you the settings I use for this image. So here is the original image before I made any adjustments at all. Here are the corrections I made, and if I just kind of scroll down, you can see I took the exposure up by half a stop. I did not add any additional sharpening. I don't want to bring up more noise, but I did add some masking to try and prevent it in the background areas. I have a little bit of luminance noise reduction, but not too much. I don't want to destroy detail this phase. I did kick up a little bit more color noise reduction, and then I used the lens corrections on this image. So let's take these 9 images and we're going to jump over to a program that I use on the Mac called Starry Landscape Stacker. If you're on a PC, you might be able to run a Mac virtual machine to use the same program, or you might want to try another program called Deep Star Skies. I've not used that program personally, but I've heard good things about it. So here we've opened the Starry Landscape Stacker application, and we can see it's automatically opened a dialog box to find our images, and it points to the last location I used, so it's already in the right location, but you would just navigate to your files, and here are the TIFFs that I exported from Lightroom using the settings that I showed. So just simply click on one end, shift click on the other to select all the images and hit OK, and it will ingest the images and create a composite image for you to review. And so here you can see the motion of the stars. I'm going to hide these red dots for a second. So you can see clearly the North Star is up here in the center of rotation, and as we get closer to the horizon, there's a lot more movement of the stars. That's what we need to deal with, and this is basically what would have happened if I had just simply used ISO 1 or 200 to shoot a longer exposure. We'd have these streaking stars. So this is what we'll need to fix by rotating the images to then stack them. To do that, Starry Landscape Stacker puts all these dots on what it thinks are stars, and it does a really good job. I'd say the top of the image is all I need. As we look towards the tree line, there's a few dots in the trees here. Those are probably legitimate stars. We may or may not need to remove them. And then down in the water, we have some stars identified. We want to eliminate them because the goal here is to identify one set of rotating stars. So we want to identify these stars that are moving counterclockwise above. We'll create that stack without considering this rotation below. That will confuse the program, and also without considering any movement in the land. We just want the moving stars to determine a perfect alignment of the stars. Then we'll repeat the process down in the water later. So to do that, you just simply click on the Adjust Stars option, and we can click this Remove Red Dots. And I'm going to use the bracket keys, the right bracket, to make a larger brush, and just paint over these automatically detected stars here. So I don't want any of these down in the foreground. It looks like we got everything. Let's zoom in, click the Zoom Actual Pixels. My mouse is acting a little funny, it seems to be double clicking lately. But we simply slide over and let's just take a look at those dots that we had that were in the tree line. So it's not clear to me these are stars. No, they're not. So I'm going to remove those. I don't want to use those as a basis of the sky. So I think that looks good. So once you've done that, these red dots are just simply your kind of rough cut of where the sky is, but it's not exact yet. What you need to do now is click Find Sky, and this will create a blue mask over what it thinks is the sky based on the stars. And it's done a pretty good job, but there's some rough edges. So just like we did with the red dots, we need to refine this a little bit. And you have two options to paint for sky or paint for ground. So sky is going to mask in. So I'm just going to create more of this blue mask by using the sky option. And you can be as precise as you want. I notice I've gotten over a little bit of trees here, so you can zoom in and fix that result if you want. I'm not going to get too crazy for the purposes of demonstration, but if you have important detail near the trees, you might want to go in and fix that. But I'm not too worried. I think this is going to be just fine. And let's get a little bit more here. And just to demonstrate here, if I painted in the wrong area, if I actually streak down here where I didn't want to be, just click on the option to paint ground, which is basically an eraser, and just simply go and remove it. So that's how you refine things. So the red dots, we're just trying to find stars in order to create this blue rough mask. This blue mask is really the key to the whole stacking operation. This is the area where it will look for movement and it will ignore everything down below. So at this point, we've got a good mask, and I'm just going to click Align and Save, and it's going to do all the work for me. We need one last thing for Photoshop, and that's going to be to select these same 9 images, right click, choose Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. Okay, so now we have all of our images layered in Photoshop. I just simply want to slide down to the bottom and shift click to select all of the layers, right click and choose Convert to Smart Object. So those 9 layers are now in this one smart object, and we simply need to go up to Layer, Smart Objects, Stack Mode, and we want the one called Mean. And by choosing Mean, we're going to average them together. So it's simply going to just blend all 9 equally, and that's going to eliminate the noise in the tree line here and give us a nice smooth result. As we zoom into the image here, we can notice if we go, I'm going to undo, here was the original image before, and then after stacking, and there's still some noise, but we can see it's been dramatically reduced. So if you ever want to reduce the noise even further, you could either use more source images, or you could take something like Nik Define and reduce the noise in this image here further. I personally like to shoot with about 5 to 20 images. I think that's plenty. If you still need to reduce the noise beyond that, then you may want to use something like Nik Define. So we have the different source elements. We now need to look at combining them. And let's take a look at the output from the stacking program. So when we created our stack, I saved 2 different outputs. Automatically, it's going to give you 2 outputs. One's called Composite and one's called Composite Sky. So let's take a look at the Composite. And this is showing us the Starry Stacker output for the entire image. So we can see that our stars look really nice and sharp. And if we look at our foreground, things are not going to look so great because they haven't been affected. So this is just going to be our starry skies that we want to grab here. If we look at the other output image, just so you can see that, the other one that's called Composite Sky, you'll see that it only outputs the areas where it essentially blended the image. So if you want to be safe, you want to make sure you're not getting any artifacts or weird edges, this is probably the layer to work with. But I'm blending everything in a soft manner at the edges, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to work with the full image. So let's take a look at the final blended image and how I put it all together. So this is the final result. Everything's been fully put together, but let's just take a walk through how it was built. So this is my stack that was created in Photoshop of the 9 different images for the foreground. So there's been no rotation, there's been no alignment. It's just getting the tree line to look good. And I don't like this tree, the branch that's sitting out here. I don't like this rock. So I added a clone layer to just knock those out, built from this base. Next, we have the outputs of the Starry Sky Stacker. We have the water layer that I've added in. Notice how the stars were not aligned in my underlying image, but I used the aligned version from Starry Sky Stacker with this mask that I've put right here, just simply to blend things together. So I just manually blocked out the areas that I'd cloned to make sure that those are showing through in this part of the image. And then I used a luminosity mask from Lumenzia to just quickly grab the edges here in a nice clean way around the trees. Also, I should note, if you're looking closely, this is Lumenzia version 3.0, not yet available, but will be a free upgrade in the coming days here for all customers. Next is the sky that I've blended on top here. And so you can see we've got the blurry stars and then we've cleaned them up, and same process of just simply adding a mask to blend them together. So we had the ground layer, took one output to blend the water, another output to blend the sky, and that's really the whole process. The next few steps here are just me doing some finishing refinements. So I added this layer that is an original source image directly imported into Photoshop that just had a really nice aurora. I liked how much more vibrant it was. In order to match the grain of the surrounding areas, I used Nik Define to reduce noise. And when we zoom in here, we'll see that the noise characteristics look very clean and similar because of using Define in that area. I didn't need to stack this because I don't have these moving stars. So it was easy enough to just use Define, and it's a low definition area. So this works great for bringing in some other elements. And then lastly, by putting the aurora here, notice the stars I have in the background and they've kind of been lost by blending in the aurora. So I took this sky layer from Starry Sky Stacker, duplicated it, and then I just blended it in one more time using the lighten blend mode. And you can see, if we just look closely here, that these missing stars come back when I do this. These missing stars come back when I click on this. So it's just the same layer duplicated on top of my adjustment in lighten blend mode to bring back those stars. So that's how I brought in the aurora but kept the stars here. The final adjustment I made was to do a selective color adjustment, something I really like to do to night skies. You can see I shifted the sky darker and more magenta and the aurora a little bit more green, just to add a little bit more color pop to the overall image. And I did something that's coming in the next version of Lumenzia here in a few days, just simply to protect the darkest areas from getting too dark. It's just a blend if to protect those areas. So that's my workflow for getting noise-free starry skies. Of course, the same workflow can be applied to any night sky, such as the Milky Way. If you want to check out the Starry Sky Stacker, please see the link below in my comments on the YouTube video or on the blog article that goes with this video.